President Trump defended the H-1B visa program, saying there isn't enough domestic talent to fill available jobs. Joining us to discuss is Grant Newsham, a retired U.S. Marine colonel and former U.S. diplomat. He's also a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy. And we also have Santiago Vidal Calvo, a policy analyst at Manhattan Institute. So good afternoon to you both. Colonel, if I may, I'll start with you today. In your view, does the U.S. need the H-1B visa programs to stay competitive on the global stage, especially against China?
Well, I think it does. You always want the best people that you can get. And the concern that I've got principally is that these sorts of programs, over some time, they become something of a racket where their original intentions and objectives are lost. And that's what I think is what's happened with the H-1B program. But in theory, it's a good one. I think the way it's turned out is not so good, and it does need some fixing.
So, Santiago, let me go to you now. What are your thoughts on this program? Do we need it?
Hey, well, thank you for the invitation. I actually do agree also that we need the H-1B program. It's a program that actually brings the best and brightest around the world, or that was the intention. And I do believe that the program needs some fixes and it needs some improvements. But in the big scheme of things, the US needs this international talent to keep up with production of talent around the world. China outspeeds the United States in production of STEM graduates by 3 or 4 times of what we're currently producing. And if we can pitch as a soft technique around the world to bring this talent to the United States and use it here for our advantage, I think that's a benefit.
Well, security concerns, if we're always relying on foreign talent, domestically.
No, I'm sorry, got cut off. Was that for me?
Right, Colonel.
Okay, thank you. Didn't hear that. Okay. Well, of course, there's a national security issue, all the time to all of this. And one thing I've noticed, I also used to work for Motorola, if anyone remembers that company, and also a big investment bank. I remember the HR people would often tell you that they could hire people so much cheaply overseas, and that's what they were all in for. And with these programs, and I would have to say HR in general, there's often a sense that that national security is somebody else's problem. So I'm not sure that it gets the attention it deserves here, but it is obviously a concern, and that's why the program needs to be very carefully monitored to ensure that you don't have these kind of national security issues. And the original intention of the program is a good one. But the way that it's worked out now, I'm just not convinced that it is. And any time that you hear that there's a lottery involved in choosing people, and there's obvious evidence of fraud as well in some of the qualifications of some of the people, maybe a lot of them from certain places, that the whole thing needs to be revamped pretty seriously.
So, Santiago, I want to follow up on your earlier point. And I want to ask, to what extent does the U.S. depend on foreign talent to sustain its different sectors right now?
Well, the H-1B visa program, it's just a very small fraction of the labor market. You're talking about 700,000 people out of more than 100 million people market in the United States. And true, for some sectors, it is very important, like, for example, tech. But it is also true that what we're bringing here is capacitated skills that around the world are tailored for the needs of the United States. And if we can bring those immigrants here, then that is a net benefit for the United States, both fiscally, because the average H-1B migrant, depending on the age, can produce up to a net benefit to the fiscal burden of the United States of $800,000. And that is, research from the Manhattan Institute, where I work at, with Daniel DiMartino, who is one of our fellows. However, I also see that many parts, like, the colonel is saying, many parts of this immigration program need to be revamped with what we previously had. Like, for example, the United States previously had restrictions for Communist Party affiliates or totalitarian regime affiliates, and we still have those for immigrant visas, like green cards. However, we removed many of them for non-immigrant visas, like the H-1B visa program. We can 100% deny entrance to the United States dependent on communist affiliation. That is something that goes against our national interests. And regardless of the skills, you don't want people that are going to go against the national interests of the United States.
So, Colonel, maybe you can address some of your earlier concerns that you brought up. How do we have a program where we can have foreign talent come into the country, but not have at the same time national security concerns, not have IP theft as well?
Well, there's always going to be that theft and that sort of risk, and that's actually not one of the main things as I see it, but rather it's that a program that is intended to be carefully applied to get specific people to do some very narrow things has been expanded apparently to sort of, some might fairly argue, displace American workers who cost too much. And when you have sort of these third-party groups that can get a lot of the H-1B visas and then dole them out, well, that it's not fair, to put it mildly. But there is that concern that it's American workers who aren't getting looked after. I think it is very much a real one. And I remember hearing this in the past, in the 80s. Remember, we were told that Americans won't work. And there's going to be the Japanese who are going to take us over. Well, there's plenty of Americans, with the skills to do these things. And sometimes you need training. We'll bring in a few trainers, but it should not be sort of a scheme to bring in large numbers of people. As I see it, there was something like 180,000 Americans who sort of got the max score on the SATs just recently. And that's a lot of people. So we do have the resources, and where we need extra people, then bring them in, but it has to be done carefully, not the way that it's been done now, where it almost reminds you of, say, when you hear that a sporting event, all the tickets are sold, and then somehow you can buy them somewhere because somebody has managed to get their hands on a lot of them. It does need to be relooked.
Okay, so Santiago, do you see any solutions? Perhaps reform is needed for this program so that we don't have the issues, the abuse as well associated with H-1B?
Well, first of all, let me just say that the H-1B visa program is not a cheap program by any means. You're talking about median salaries of $120,000 a year. These are not cheap labor that you're trying to import from somewhere else. And the median just means that 50% of those H-1Bs are actually above that 120,000. So it's not cheap labor by all means, especially when it costs the employer before the $100,000 fee hike almost $15,000 to $20,000 to hire an H-1B employee. Now it costs them $120,000 to hire an H-1B employee. So we're talking about a big investment that we're doing into the country. Some things that you can do to revamp this program is choose some prevailing wage. You grab the salaries that are the highest by profession and by age, and you essentially, you give them better chances of winning a lottery. For example, the United States would benefit from having a 23-year-old engineer or IT specialist that comes to this country with valuable skills before having the same exact profession, but 40 or 50 years old. Because if you're grabbing younger, that means those people are going to pay more in taxes. And H-1B employees pay around $85 billion in taxes to the United States. So we're talking a big portion of the population, a big payment going from a very, very small portion of a population. And we can even revamp this program to be even more beneficial for the United States.
Okay, Colonel, maybe just one more response from you, and then, pardon me, and then one more from Santiago. So I wanted to ask you, Colonel, what ultimately does America's superpower status depend on?
Depends on the things that make us successful, and that's consensual government, the freedoms we take for granted, free markets, and a sort of a world that plays by those rules as well. But it does not sort of require us, as I say, to at all cost forget about who the Americans are. And this system ultimately needs to be, like every system, needs to look after American workers. And that's American workers from all over the place. And it needs to be carefully done, carefully handled. And I think American workers have gotten lost in a lot of this. The idea is that, well, you can, and I've seen this happen, you can get somebody cheaper, you bring them in. And I've heard that all the time in the companies that I've worked for. But say American workers tend to get lost in all of the discussion about this. And they need to be looked after first. National security needs to be an issue as well. So it's a system that does need to be fixed, and I think fixed pretty quickly.
Okay, Santiago, just final thoughts here. Same question to you. What would you attribute to the United States' top spot in the global stage?
Well, I think it's our ability to influence the world with the things we do. I think it's to keep our ranking as a primary effective uh, builder and creator of all the things that made America great. And for example, 57% of STEM PhDs are responsible for a big portion of the education sector in the STEM. Most patents are built by immigrants. Those things are very beneficial. Companies like Tesla would have never existed if Elon Musk, an H-1B recipient, would have not come here to the United States and created thousands of jobs more for Americans. I think what we need to see here is the value that each visa has. And there is research to show that each H-1B visa increments the job market. I would actually say that most American workers benefit from having H-1B visas because H-1B visas pay $27 billion in Social Security and Medicare here in the United States. Those are things that, sure, a very small portion of a population loses, but are they necessarily losing because H-1B visas are working as replacement? There is hundreds of thousands of jobs open in the tech market, more than the H-1B visas that come each year. I think it's a matter of competition. It's a matter of, are we choosing the best people for the job? And if those best people can come from abroad and help America in the process keep its status as a world leading economy and as a world leader in production of technologies, I think that's a net benefit for the United States.
Well, all right, let's leave the conversation here for today. Thank you both, Santiago, Colonel Newsham. Thank you very much.